Alright, we've reached that wonderful time of year again where we talk about the worst that the year had to offer, at least from what I saw. The only difference I can think of that this list might have compared to other ones is that I noticed while I was taking these down and putting them in whatever order they're in, that a lot of these, like usually I'll, go on and on about something because I just hate it so much, and then as I go on, I'll end up finding new things that I hate about it as time has progressed over the year. But looking these over, a lot of these are so vague to me now and feel so long ago, and I so successfully tried to push them out of my mind as much as I could. I may not have as much to say as normal, which will be better because then the sooner we can get through this and we can just put all the really shitty movies behind us. So as usual, there is a 10 and then a dishonorable mention, and I guess I'll go ahead and put like 4 or 5 up here on the screen as well, that aren't on here, but are definitely shit, and it might seem like those absolutely belong on a list like this, but I think I found these just a little worse and a little more offensive, which might be hard to believe, but yeah. So yeah, there's stuff that was worse than like Tom and Jerry and Space Jam and the new Home Alone even. And they're all here. But once again, that is just my opinion. There might even be a couple of things on here that you actually liked. Sorry about that, I guess. But actually, not really. So I guess we will go into the dishonorable mention, which is the Virtuoso. And honestly, the only sole reason this isn't on like the main 10 is because Anthony Hawkins has a scene towards the beginning that's actually a pretty knockout scene. It's like a whole monologue, and it's like a whole backstory for the movie, and that scene is surprisingly really good, and I have no idea what it's doing in this movie, because this movie otherwise is basically just a straight-to-DVD Bruce Willis movie without Bruce Willis. And it's like even Bruce Willis stayed away from this. That's how if you can imagine just how bottom of the barrel it is. That's just another one of those stupid assassin movies where it's like him going around this, actor that you might have seen around, whose name I can never recall. And it's like we've got decent people in supporting roles here, but the lead is just one of those generic looking, straight to video action people, and he's this assassin. He's narrating most of the time, talking about his assassin rules and all that shit. All of his, the strict way he does his job, and you're supposed to think he's like real cool and real badass and real threatening, but the movie's dialogue is obviously in the gutter, and then especially it's sometimes it can be really hard to criticize dialogue though, not just because it's shitty, but when you have people like Abby Cornish that are in this movie, and I don't hate Abby Cornish all the time, but her missteps are really really bad, and you would think she has a complete and total inability to deliver a line. When you look at this movie, like just even the simplest line, and then it ends up going on these it tries to do a whole bunch of twists and turns, and every single one of them is so unbelievably predictable. And it's like obviously there's a lot of predictable movies, but sometimes you can still get blown away by just how much a movie doesn't even try to catch you by surprise. It does like every single possible thing you completely expect it to do, even when it's trying to surprise you. And this is one of those. That's about the only other thing I really remember is it using like reusing a lot of its own footage, where it's like it's one of those movies that doesn't think you're smart enough to remember the movie. Obviously I don't remember it now, but while you're watching it, it's like they think you don't remember what just happened. So pretty much every time something is revealed, they have to re-show you a scene in the movie to say, hey, remember this thing. And it doesn't really like elaborate on that. It's just showing you previous scenes in the movie, and and the movie's not even that long, so that's the kind of piece of shit that is. But like I said, that one Anthony Hawkins scene is like actually legitimately memorable. Otherwise, it would certainly be here in the 10 easily. But no, we're actually going to start off the 10 with Mortal Kombat, which had a surprising amount of people that liked it at the time. I don't know. I've been seeing a lot of hate for it lately, and I don't know if people that liked it previously are starting to come around, or if just the people that hate it are just now seeing it or getting more vocal. But I remember feeling like I was in kind of a minority when it first came out, and I was so confused that people were liking it because I couldn't find really anything in it apart from, once again, much like the Virtuoso, the opening scene is obviously our peak, and it's like the strongest point, and it gives you the idea that you might be about to see something that's like of genuine quality, and then the rest of the movie happens, and it is astonishing how many wrong directions it takes. And you would think it's supposed to be this big step up because everybody was like, no, the '95 movie has its following, but I don't like it either. But when this one was coming out, it was like, oh yeah, we're finally getting an R-rated one. Fuck that PG-13 shit or whatever. But when this got here, it was clear that that's all they really had to go on. But at the same time, as far as taking advantage of what it has, yeah, you've got an R-rated Mortal Kombat movie now. It just doesn't have Mortal Kombat in it. The tournament's not in it. And not only that, we're following around a main character that is like original to the movie, not original in general, original to the movie and the other characters, which was a dreadful idea. And a move that, as far as I've heard, nobody is on board with. So there's that. Like, even the people that I remember liking at the time were like, "Who the fuck is this guy? And why do we care?" We don't. That's the answer. And also talking about the '95 movie and its reputation, where you would think they'd be taking it up a notch or something, especially with stuff like Sonya Blade being super super cringy in the other one. But no, she's still. It's apparently impossible to write her without her being cringy, I guess. So there's that. But there's one thing in particular that I thought was the absolute worst thing about this movie, even worse than the movie not having a tournament in it, which is a really big problem in itself. And it's something that everybody seemed to like and say was the high point of the movie, which once again was just really confusing to me. Kano being the comedy relief and just doing his thing constantly, just constantly making these terrible, horrible jokes, and they get aggressively less funny as they go on. And I guess you could try to make the argument that he's supposed to be, his jokes are supposed to be bad or something like that. But it is constant. It is the whole, like, as soon as he shows up until the point that he did die. Right, I think that might have been the high point of the movie for me, that he eventually died. Um, but the whole time he's constantly there and it's like I could seriously not believe people thought that was the high point. I thought I was in another fucking universe or something. Um, so yeah, it was baffling to me that so many fans of Mortal Kombat itself supposedly found this so satisfying when it came out. But I said I don't want to hate on anybody for loving something. That's what we want, is for people to love more things instead of hate. But good Christ, I was just so completely baffled by anybody finding this satisfying in any way whatsoever. And not to mention the handling of the whole, Sub-Zero Scorpion thing. How it's basically more of a bookend, when apparently it was supposed to be what the movie was, given the poster at least. But so my disappointment was reined in a little bit because I don't watch trailers or advertisements or anything like that. But I can't imagine going into this movie and completely having it built up. It was going to be this thing, and you don't even get the main thing. You don't even get the main course of Mortal Kombat. You just get whatever the fuck this is throwing at you, which is just all lame and all bullshit, and very unfortunate. And they didn't even really use the, being able to do the fatalities. Like there's a few in there that are kind of like, but it's only for like a split second, and it's like, oh yeah, there's the R rating. But no, that's pretty much all it is. It's mostly just bullshit, and I honestly couldn't stand it and could not wait for it to end. Speaking of endings, number 9 is a movie called How It Ends. I don't know how many people saw this, but yeah, Don't Look Up is not the only movie this year that is this sort of comedy about a meteor coming to Earth and killing us all. This one actually beat it to the punch, but obviously we've been seeing quirky comedy end of the world movies since like Seeking a Friend for the End of the World and stuff like that, which this feels much more in line with, or at least what it's trying to do. And Zoe Lister-Jones, who gave us that really shitty The Craft sequel that nobody wanted and nobody liked last year, or the end of 2020. And she is the writer, director, and star. She wrote and directed it with her husband at the time, I think they're separated now, and if this is what I was making with my partner, I'd want to separate from them as well. And it's her walking around with her younger self, like an incarnation of her younger self. And she's just walking around and running into cameos and doing really bad, what appears to be really bad improv. And that's the movie. That is the whole movie. It's like an hour and 20 minutes, but it is like so. It's really directionless, despite the fact that we have a clear destination here. But it's like very late into the movie that they even bother to tell us they established the world's ending, but then just very in the most nonchalant way possible we find out, oh, by the way, it's a meteor. And every now and then we can like see it in the background in these admittedly decent shots. But for the most part, it is just this massive waste of time. Everybody going around trying to be as quirky as possible, and then trying to cram as many cameos into it as possible. And these cameos, by the way, are like A-list people right now, and like you would think just the presence of these people would give you joy, but at the same time, that sucks because that's clearly what they thought when they were writing it. Was we don't really have to come up with anything. As long as we have all these people in it, just for these brief little moments, these little one scenes, that's all we need apparently. We don't need to write a movie or anything. We don't need to come up with actual dialogue or actually anything to say. Apart from at the last minute it starts doing the whole, the true meaning of living your life bullshit. And it's like, it's just so ironic that this movie is about, giving everything in your life as much meaning as possible and savoring those moments, savoring that time while we still have it. And this movie is a complete and total fucking waste of time. The movie's literally reminding you there's so many better things you could be doing than watching this bullshit. And like I said, don't you can look up the cast list. It's a wild cast. It's a very long one, and you're gonna recognize the average person would recognize at least 90% of the names. And they don't really get to bring anything. The only appearances that I actually liked and seemed to bring some kind of humor that actually worked was Paul Scheer and Rob Hubel. Despite all the other really big names in it, their interaction is pretty much the only joy I got out of this movie. And like all the other appearances, it's very, very brief. And it's just doing that thing where it's so relentlessly trying to be that almost stereotypical quirky, and it's so. And you would think, being an indie movie, it would be trying to subvert cliches, but it's, so lacking any kind of self-awareness whatsoever. And so, thinking it is so incredibly profound in what it's saying, the very surface-level bullshit that it's saying, in this concept that we've already seen so many times, and we would later see, later in the year with Don't Look Up. It's the only thing that, that Don't Look Up was doing, that this isn't like some kind of satire or anything. This is all focusing on trying to be super profound and super indie, and it just fails at pretty much everything that it tries. So that's what that is. Number 8 is Thunder Force, which is a movie that I feel like I don't hate as much as I could. But you can imagine the quality just based solely on the fact that this is another Melissa McCarthy movie that her husband Ben Falcone wrote and directed, which is when Melissa McCarthy is at her worst. Like when people see Melissa McCarthy in a comedy, they usually think, oh, like, I guess people on the same wavelength as me would say, oh, it's the same thing. It's her doing horrible slapstick and horrible improv and stupid jokes involving weight or falling down or whatever. And it's really only the Ben Falcone movies that really make that. Like, those are the ones that are really shitty. Like, you look at Spy, and remember that Paul Feig did Spy. And it's like, you realize where the problem is here, and it's that whole problem we've been talking about every time McCarthy-Falcone movie comes up, is the fact that, yes, Falcone is in love with her, so she could do whatever she's going to do on that camera, it doesn't matter. And the person that is in love with her and wants to spend their life with her will probably find it funny. But that doesn't speak for anybody else in the world. That's... like, there are those things where those special people to you can do something that means not jack shit to anybody else. And you're putting this movie out into the world. You're putting it on Netflix where everybody and their fucking mother's going to see it. And you're just going to rely on that. That it's like, if this is funny between the two of you, it's going to be to the rest of the world, and clearly it's not, because we've been through this so many times with this pairing in the movies like this. where we like very not long before this at all, we had super intelligence, which admittedly I think was worse than this is, if you can believe it, because this one has a shitload of problems too. It's them trying to do the whole superhero thing, and they try to do like kind of a world building thing. They put it feels like there's so much effort, but at the same time no effort whatsoever, because despite it trying to do like a world building thing and a superhero thing, it looks incredibly cheap. They put like no ideas into this writing. There's no real jokes in the script that work whatsoever, except the normal shit that you would see in there, but those aren't going to work at all. We got another Bobby Cannavale bad guy, which you would think would be unbeat, like no matter what it would work, but not the case, as this proves aggressively. Is all the action looks like it's on a green screen. A lot of the jokes are really really repetitive, and they go on and on and on. There's like a whole section of the movie where she's like training or something and eating raw chicken or some shit, and these jokes just go on forever. And they always think it's one of those comedies that always falls into that trap of when they think they have a winner of a joke, they're gonna milk it. But the trouble is you don't really have any proof that it's gonna work on an audience. But so they have the arrogance. If it worked, of course, I would say confidence, but because it doesn't work, I'm going to say arrogance. I don't know if you can call that double standard or not, but the idea that they will just go ahead and milk a joke, assuming that it's this big winner, and it just goes on, and just makes it's worse every time it shows up instead of better, which is what I think they're going for. And a very very sloppy backstory where they start off as kids, and her and Octavia Spencer. Are the main characters, and of course Octavia Spencer's the smart one, and McCarthy is the bumbling one that's holding her back, because of course she is. Because you would think if anybody gets like, okay, we're talking about how she and Falcone can't seem to make a comedy together, and I'm saying it's like because what he sees may not be what we see necessarily, but it's like you would also think if he's the person that's in love with her the most, that he'd be able to see where her actual talents lie. She has 2 Oscar nominations, and one of those is for a comedy. A very broad, slapsticky comedy, believe it or not. Paul Feig's thing, once again. But he just cannot seem to find her strengths. And that's a little weird. Of all the people, that should be able to see all of her strengths. But this teaming does not work. It has yet to work. And I am terrified to find out what they're going to do together next. So let's go on to the next thing. Number 7 being The Addams Family 2. And I honestly wasn't expecting to hate this much. It was kind of a gradual thing, where like when I started, like it was literally like halfway through the movie I realized just how much I hated it. Because for the most part it's just your average everyday animated movie. Just super lazy. Modern jokes are going to be dated. They're probably already dated right now. And the animation just looks really generic and uninspired, and the story is just some dragged out bullshit that we already know the outcome of the second that it starts, because they have this whole plot going on about how maybe Wednesday isn't actually their child or something like that, and they end up going on a road trip and so they're hitting all these different vacation spots, and it's basically every vacation spot is a new bit that doesn't really have anything else to do with some cohesive plot or anything like that. And every time we reach one, it's like at some point they're talking about, like, they get to Texas and they see there's an advertisement for like a pageant for like younger girls, and it's like, okay, as soon as you see that sign, before the joke has even come around, you're thinking, okay, well, Wednesday's going to get caught up in that pageant. How long are we going to have to wait for this? It's like, how long is this going to last? And that's basically what each new bit in the movie that comes along feels like. It's like, okay, we know what this bit is now. How long do we have to wait before it's over? Sometimes you have to wait for it to start. You see it so far ahead. And then eventually we get to a point where there's a whole lot of shit going on during the climax. There's a villain. There's 2 different climaxes. You think it's put you out of your misery and ended itself, and then it's like, oh no, we actually have a whole other climax where the villain's like bigger now or something. And that's kind of the turning point where it's like, oh no, I actually genuinely hate this, I think. And it's like, because there's one thing about just being a harmless animated movie that, will go in one ear and out the other, or anything like that. But I think I'm gonna go ahead and cheat here and just show you just a small snippet of the review that I did when it first came out and show you the mindset that I was in right after I had seen it. It's like the waste of time that it is like it's made for kids, but it's like kids grow up fast. They need that time. And movies like this take that time and they never give it back. And they do nothing with it. They give them no experience whatsoever. They're just killing time. And it's like, by the time they get to like this age or older, they're gonna really wish they had that time. And the Addams Family too will have already taken it. Like it has taken mine, but so much of mine has already been taken anyway, it doesn't really matter anymore. The embrace of sweet death will soon come, and I will not have to see more movies like the Addams Family too, So number 6 is a movie called Here Today, which is a movie that Billy Crystal directed, which is something he hasn't done in quite a long time. He's got like, Forget Paris and Mr. Saturday Night that I don't really feel one way or the other about either of them. And he did that baseball movie that's supposedly really good that I never saw, that I would like to, because I actually do really like Billy Crystal in general a lot. But the thing here is that, especially nowadays, he is that comedian that's sort of like, you know the comedians where it's like, a younger generation will say, oh, their jokes are so dated, or oh, they have dad jokes or stuff like that. Billy Crystal is basically the personification of that comedian. Where all of his jokes are going to be super dated and super old, and it'll be stuff that make, people above 60 say like, oh, that's the way jokes used to be, that was, the good old days or some bullshit. And that's basically the concept of this movie, is that good old days bullshit. Where Billy Crystal works for by the way, this movie is this very ridiculous portrayal of live TV, where he's writing for some Saturday Night Live kind of thing. But of course, none of his jokes are landing for the newer generation. And the directions that this plotline goes are so fucking stupid. And so unbelievable. And you would think, oh, it's a comedy about, Billy Crystal writing, sketches or whatever. How believable does it have to be? Well, I'll tell you. This movie is also trying to be a drama about dementia at the same time. And he becomes best friends with Tiffany Haddish along the way. And they've got this platonic sort of thing going on. It's flirty, but it's platonic also. And Tiffany Haddish brings in all of her unfunny glory, as she always does. And it's pretty much a total disaster throughout, especially trying to balance that whole, sincere, super serious kind of thing. He's also dealing with, like, the loss of his wife and stuff like that. And it's really, really trying to be super, super dramatic, while also bringing in these really stupid fucking jokes along the way. And they become best friends throughout, he and Tiffany Haddish. And it's trying so, so, so hard to be, like, the feel-good movie of the year. Like, it's literally, like, it's so aggressive in how it's trying to be liked. Like, it is on its knees begging you to like it. And it gets really desperate and really embarrassing along the way. And of course there's scenes, much like I didn't even mention this in Thunder Force. When you're trying to do a feel-good movie, the big fallback thing is always somebody's singing for a prolonged amount of time that all it's doing is eating up the runtime and being filler. And it's like, well, as long as people are singing, it's feel-good, right? And this tries that as well. And it's, like I said, I hate to go as hard on this as I did, because I do genuinely love Billy Crystal, but I mean, this kind of shit is the stuff that makes his style of comedy look bad, which is really unfortunate. And just one more thing that I wanted to mention again. I mentioned this when I actually reviewed it, but I'll bring it up again, and I think I've marked it this time. I had trouble finding it last time. Roger Ebert reviewed his movie, coincidentally enough, Father's Day, and without even thinking about the fact that they were both Billy Crystal movies, this quote came to mind while I was watching Here Today. And it's that whole thing about, comedies always falling into this thing when especially when the comedian star of it has also wrote and directed it. They'll try so hard to make it a drama in this really heartfelt thing, despite the fact that they're making a comedy. And I think Roger Ebert cracked the reason why that is, where while reviewing Father's Day, he builds up the movie and talks about the plot, and then he asks will the movie get all smooshy at the end with the kind of cheap sentimentality comedians are suckers for because they all secretly think they embody a little of Chaplin? I think that's exactly what it is, and that's exactly what the problem with this movie is. And what's really funny is the very next sentence is, "This movie could have been written by a computer." Um, yeah, I think that fits the bill for this one again as well. So that's really unfortunate, but because Billy Crystal and writing and directing, and he's great usually, but this kind of shit just isn't working. So that's how I feel about that. Which is practically nothing. Even when it's getting super emotional, I got nothing for this movie whatsoever. I'm sorry. Number 5 is the absolute disaster that Amazon put out. Cinderella. The one with Billy Porter in all the advertisements, even though he's got like a scene or two. And it's actually Camila Cabello, and she's doing this in Idina Menzel because they're super lazy in their casting. And it's like, who are the top musical people right now that just can skate by on this with no real effort whatsoever? Oh, there we go. Here's your cast list. These people are popular, right? I think the only thing they got out of this was Pierce Brosnan is kind of fun here, but apart from that, it's one thing that we don't really need another fucking Cinderella movie already, if ever again. I think it's more than been done to a point. I don't know what else you can do with this, but this movie thought it had an idea, and they thought that winning idea was making it a musical. But not only that, how much more... We were talking about the low effort in the casting and doing another Cinderella, but what's just one more step beyond you could take to be even more uninspired and pointless and lazy and easy? All the songs in this musical are pre-existing songs, because of course they are. They're trying to do some Rock of Ages thing or something. And pointless musical numbers abound with no passion in them whatsoever. You can tell how pre-recorded everything is because there's somewhat energy in the vocals, no energy whatsoever in any of the performances. It's really weird and really bizarre. And of course, you've got James Corden's presence here, which speaks a lot for that. We just recently brought that up in one of the awards videos about how nothing in this movie is good news by any means. And it actually got to a point. Now, I really do everything I can to watch all of a movie. And of course, I would not put something on a list like this if I had not watched the whole thing. But I gotta tell you, even though I did watch the whole thing, and I didn't cheat, I desperately wanted to. It would be so easy to skip the songs, at least to get us closer to the end. And I was to every single time one of them started, I got this horrible, terrible feeling. And a lot of times in a musical, you can tell when a song is coming, even before it starts. And I would still just get this singing feeling like, here comes another fucking song, I just know it. And I don't think ever before have I been so tempted to skip the songs in a musical. Because what are we going to miss? We know the fucking songs because they already exist. The only thing that the person in the role just sang it again, did a cover of it that's really not that great. There's what else is there to this? Why does this exist? And the sets look relatively cheap for the kind of production that it is, and the costumes just look like actors playing dress up. That's all. Nothing here is convincing. Nothing here is worthwhile. There is no reason for this movie to exist except for torture reasons. But it's like that whole thing that may be a myth, may not be a myth, where they use Justin Bieber music to torture people. I think this movie could be used in the same way and have the same effect, if not be even more effective. And the thing what was especially torturous was I was having flashbacks to the worst kind of animated movies, where they end in singing and dancing, but they're not ending. It's about to end. Because I will wait for the first end credit before I turn a movie off, because that's the fair thing to do. To give the movie a full, complete chance until it is over all the way. But a lot of movies are merciful enough that they will have the credits and this dancing and singing happening at the same time. But not this. They made me work to get to that last end credit. There's singing and dancing and singing and dancing and singing and dancing. And more and more and more and more singing and dancing. And it's refusing to end. It's refusing to give us that first end credit. And then when it finally did, it was like having just run a marathon or two. And that's how this... to think that this was made for entertainment. To think that there are people out there that must have been entertained by this and couldn't get enough of it. And I can't believe those people exist. I don't know any of them. I've never heard of any of them. I've never heard word from any of them. Like even like looking around online for like positive reviews or something. It's it's mind-boggling to me that anybody could be entertained by this. Like it's unbelievable. But believe it or not, there's actually 4 movies that are worse than this. Number 4 is Willy's Wonderland, which is especially painful because by all means this movie should have worked in some way. Because, as you know, I am not at all quick to put a Nicolas Cage movie on a list like this. Because I very much am in that camp where I will embrace anything that Nicolas Cage puts out there. Even if it's bad, he does something to elevate it. Or there's some kind of, like, you know, insane glory in it somewhere if you look for it. And it's worthwhile in some way, in some entertaining factor. Yet somehow this one, with its weird-ass plot of animatronics coming to life in this sort of Chuck E. Cheese-like environment and killing people. And Nicolas Cage is the, you know, the night guard or whatever that works there that has to kill them. And it's like, you know, trying to be super gory and super bloody and stuff like that, super over the top. Especially over the top in the way that Cage has no lines throughout the whole movie. So basically, a lot of his stuff is like dancing and fighting. And fighting and dancing. And like I said, you write this down on paper and everything should work. And like just describing it, it's like I'm already imagining a better movie. But this is such a disaster. First of all, it's one of those things where, one of the things that can really do a movie in, and you hear about, you know, a lot of indie directors working around stuff like this, but a lot of the problems in movies like this is that the idea and the execution doesn't match the budget. And this oftentimes looks like somebody wrote, they bit off way, they bit way more off than they could chew in the writing process, and they did not, you cannot make a movie like this with the budget they had without it looking like complete and total shit, without it looking like you just shot it, you know, with some friends, not only with just some friends, but it's like you have Nicolas Cage is here and Beth Grant is here, and it's one of those cases where the rest of the cast is like probably like the director's nieces and nephews or something. And it's trying to bring back this whole sort of slasher feel, I think. But it's like the more you can recognize what it's trying to do, the more you can tell how miserably it's failing. And even the kills, like you would think, like when you're making a movie like this, if there's one like if you were going to put any effort into acting coaches for any of your cast, or the writing, or anything like that, or production values at all, the most you would put into it is the kills. At least make the kills memorable, because you're making this sort of slasher movie with this insane concept. But all the kills are super redundant. They all look exactly the same, and everything in this just looks so fucking cheap and recycled. And it's like, when a movie with a concept like this, it's unbelievable how much this didn't work. Like it wasn't even close. And it's like, even there would be just even some guilty pleasure factor or something like that, or it's like it's like I said, I don't buy into the whole so bad it's good thing. It's either entertaining enough or it's just shit. But it's I honestly can't believe how wrong this movie went. And like I said, a lot of it has to do with just the redundant nature of it and how it feels like you can tell how hard it's trying to be crazy. They had the whole birthday song thing that you could tell they were desperately hoping would take off and become some horror icon or something, which isn't going to happen. But it's still somehow felt so like nothing. Like it was literally just the same scenes over and over and over again. And the scene was bad the first time, and it just didn't improve as it went along. And I don't think this would have even been improved if you gave Nicolas Cage lines, because honestly, it's part of the crazy factor that he has no lines and that he could just do it, you know, silently, which to my understanding is something that he's always wanted to do. And I mourn that this was the movie that got that thing that he'd always wanted to do. Because there's so many better things he could have done that with. Because he could absolutely do a silent performance that would be amazing. But this movie was not going to allow that. It's, like I said, it's yet another one of those cases where it feels like it's trying too hard and also not near enough, which is a really ugly place to be. So this was just all around bullshit and a total and complete waste of time. However, number 3 is He's All That. Because apparently She's All That wasn't enough. Like, because when this came out, when I heard this was going to exist, and they were like remaking She's All That, but switching the genders, my thought was, oh, it must be a case where like everybody, like, I hadn't seen She's All That in a long time, so I was like, maybe they thought, you know, She's All That was problematic or something, and they were gonna fix that and maybe do something clever or something. I don't know. It sounds like a bad idea either way, doesn't it? So, but I went ahead and rewatched She's All That shortly before this, and it was. I'm kind of glad that I did that because it really just highlights what all went wrong with this movie. Because, like I was saying, She's All That is still She's All That. Like, it's not like this, you know, pinnacle of 90s comedy or anything like that. It's fucking She's All That, okay? But to take that and to think, oh, this needs some sort of updating or whatever, you would think they're gonna be like, oh, you know, 90s comedies are so dated now, let's take that and kind of do the, almost make like a parody of She's All That or something. But no, they made the same goddamn movie, just significantly worse. Like, it's like She's All That's starting to look really good right now. And I never thought it was bad or anything, but but this is a whole other level of why the fuck did they even make this at all? Because, and I think the main problem I have with this movie, the thing that really, really stuck with me about what's so fucked up about this movie, is how incredibly hypocritical it is. Because, first of all, you would think, you know, the purpose of this movie would be to correct any mistakes from She's All That and make something more clever or something like that. But do you remember how in She's All That, the sort of, I guess the villain of the movie was Paul Walker, but like the secondary antagonist kind of here is Brock Hudson, the Matthew Lillard character. And the reason that Brock Hudson was the character that he was because he was super vapid and was famous for this really stupid reason. And that attitude came out into his real life, and you realize that around people that aren't fame hungry, he's an absolute joke. When he's dancing around the party, people are like trying to avoid him. He is an absolute punchline. And now, in this one, the person that was famous for the same reasons Brock Hudson was famous is now the main character, the Freddie Prinze Jr. part. She's famous on, like, social media and shit. She's an influencer. And the whole conflict starts with her losing her followers. And basically, what the movie comes around, and it's doing the whole thing where it's like, oh, you know, on social media, we're actually not that perfect, and like that's the whole thing. Like that's how she wins people back over, is saying like, you know, social media is basically like everybody that's on there that seems perfect, it's actually all fake, and we're actually all kind of similar. We all have the same problems. We're all actually, you know, have the same blemishes under all of our makeup and our filters and shit like that. That's the message. But then the conflict is resolved, and the movie ends on its happy note, because she eventually gets all of her followers back. And there's just so many... There's too many things to count about what's so fucking wrong about that. Not to mention the fact that, to top this off, as if that is not hypocritical enough, the star, the person that's playing this part, that I will not call an actress, I had to Google after I watched the movie, and it turns out that she is... one of those, she's basically like she's like a TikTok star or something is what they called her, and it's like, and I remember after I watched it, after we had the whole thing where it's like, you know, oh, Instagram isn't real life. That's the message of the movie supposedly, and the message that her character says, you know, Instagram isn't real life, you know, and the whole resolution is she puts up pictures that are real that show off like her blemishes or what she looks like in the morning or some shit. So it was like, I'm just gonna take a look. So I went to the person that played this role's Instagram. You would sure as shit think she has a perfect life and the perfect appearance constantly. And it's like just so... There's so many things about this movie that are so full of shit. It's unbelievable. And that's not even really to mention the plot about taking the dude and making him, you know, changing his appearance and making him popular and all that. That's almost secondary. I mean, it's fucked up in itself, but it's so secondary to all the really bad shit that is in this. I feel like that's where it really took off, and just how shit that it is. Was just it's to glamorize what it does, pretending that it's not, is so vile. and, and I just this movie's just all bad vibes. And once again, like all these shitty teen comedies that go straight to Netflix, when they need time to kill, somebody's just gonna start singing or dancing in the middle of it. And it's like it's so weird how much of a trend that is. How trendy it is to be so blatantly lazy and hoping nobody will notice that you're just killing time and wasting time. You know, people have other things to do. And you throw shit like this into movies like this. You even make movies like this. Like, that was your first problem. And this goes back to all the stuff also where it's like, you'd think it'd be updating the datedness of a 90s comedy. But no, we've got rich girl shovels shit on a farm kind of thing. And this is stuff that Sandra Bullock wouldn't even have done in the 90s. This is parody. It's parody without being parody. And once again, you go into it thinking it might be parody, and it's not. It's basically trying to just be a remake, just with the gender switched, and try to be sincere about it. And it's embarrassing. I get the only way they try to save it is that Rachel Lee Cook and Matthew Lillard are in it. And of course they played the song where she's walking down the stairs and she makes a comment about the song or something. But Rachel Lee Cook's just kind of there. The only person that's really trying hard to save the day is Matthew Lillard, and God bless him. But he's so much better than this. But I hope he got some good money out of this, because he earned it. So, God, oh my God, fuck that movie. Okay, number 2 was gonna be, there were gonna be 2 separate movies that were on this list in different spots. But as I was thinking about them and trying to remember back to them, I realized how redundant it was to have both of them on here in separate places. So I just grouped them together here at number 2. Just one of them is significantly worse than the other. I want to make that known. So the real number 2 is Gunpowder Milkshake. But to a lesser extent, Kate goes in there as well. These movies where we have these supposed badass assassins. We got the neon lights. We got all this post-John Wick bullshit where everybody, like, ever since John Wick came out, every fucking buddy is trying to be John Wick. And just completely embarrassing themselves in the process. And like I said, Kate to a lesser degree, because it's, you know, it's super embarrassing, it's super cringy, it's trying so hard to be badass. A lot of the dialogue is devoted to having another character tell us how badass Mary Elizabeth Winstead is supposed to be. And they're not showing us at all. Like the whole movie is trying so hard. It does the slow-mo. I think there's a moment where she's actually like walking in slow-mo with sunglasses with a cigarette dangling from her mouth, and it's ridiculous. It's every Crank ripoff also. The whole thing where the assassin's been poisoned and stuff like that. It's funny how that's like its own thing. Because we had that, we had 24 Hours to Kill, that Ethan Hawke movie. But then obviously it's also, you talk about post-John Wick world, we've got stuff like Atomic Blonde, it's clearly supposed to be. And it's just a whole checklist of movies that already exist. And it has no reason for being here whatsoever. And it drags itself on for way too long. And then the action gets so repetitive and boring. And then like the harder it tries to be cool, the more boring and redundant it becomes, and it's ridiculous. But Gunpowder Milkshake is a whole other level of bad and lame and cringy, and it's like I hate that there's a theme to all of these where I keep having to use the same adjectives. But that's kind of where you find the worst of the worst. Is then like you're just kind of get stuck in a vortex of the same shit over and over and over again. And it's like, just when you think, you know, you're watching Kate and you're like, oh, I've seen this movie over and over and over again. Gunpowder Milkshake, which Gunpowder Milkshake may have come first, I don't even remember. But they were right here together, and Gunpowder Milkshake actually made me turn on Karen Gillan again. Because I initially thought that she was one of the worst actresses working today.
But then we got more into the Avengers movies, and we had the Jumanji movies, and I was like, oh, okay, Karen Gillan's okay. Okay, that's okay. She's actually cool. She can actually do this. That's great. And then Gunpowder Milkshake came out, and I was like, oh yes, this was the person I thought was one of the worst actresses working today. There she is. She disappeared for a second. But it's not just that, and I can't put it on her, all on her at all. Everything about this movie is so fucking stupid and played out, and it's the title alone and like the poster alone, like you look at that and you think either this is going to be amazing or it's going to be dreadful, and there's no in between. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. And of course, it's on the dreadful side, but even more dreadful than I could have imagined. And you talk about, obviously the dialogue is absolutely terrible. There was some line that Carlo Gugino had about being a librarian that I mentioned when I reviewed it, and thankfully I don't remember what it is now, but it was so. It's like the characters aren't even having the same conversations while they're trying to crack jokes, and it's. But that's the thing to take away from this is the fact that this is supposed to be some hardcore action movie. So really, it's a matter of how the action scenes are handled. Well, there's one scene where she's supposed to, like, I think her arms have gone numb or her hands have gone numb, and she's supposed to fight her way out of this somehow. That they don't commit to at all. Like they could have really gone this whole she can't use her hands thing and really milked it and done some interesting things with it, unexpected things with it. But she's using her arms and her hands pretty quickly again because no commitment whatsoever to their ideas. But there's one fight scene in particular that really stood out in a bowling alley, and you can tell it's supposed to be hardcore by the constant editing and the loud soundtrack and stuff like that. It thinks it's being super, super badass, and everybody in this fight is moving around like they have a stick up their ass. And it's like, I don't know who the hell choreographed this. Surely nobody got paid to choreograph this. I would certainly hope not. Otherwise somebody got severely ripped off. But then again, I guess the person that would get ripped off the most would be the people behind this movie, like the filmmakers, and they deserve every bad notice they're going to get for making this movie. Period. So if the choreographer was trying to intentionally sabotage them, I'm not going to shed a tear for them. If they wrote this script or at least approved this script, they deserve all the hate they can get. And that's all I really remember is just action scenes that went on and on and on and on. And I remember there's one big action scene in the library where it feels very much like the climax, and it's not. If I remember correctly, it maybe still had like half an hour to go. And it's just... And it's the kind of movie also just kind of gets worse and worse as it goes, where it's like, they can't top how terrible that scene was, how terribly choreographed that scene was. But no, it just keeps going and going and going and going, and thinking it's making these little clever points, and its action, like everything's in super slow mo, and it's I don't get the slow mo thing. Obviously, The Matrix did it in a certain way, but for like when your whole scene slows down. This is what's taking so long, and I felt like I was being held hostage by the movie, and it's like when a movie doesn't end, it seriously feels like you're trapped with it, and that's not how you, unless that's a point. If you're watching like a Saw movie or something, you might want to feel trapped for the effect, but when you're just here, for like some shoot 'em up movie or whatever that shouldn't really take that much effort to enjoy from the audience's perspective, it's. Yeah, I could have sworn this was going to be the worst movie of the year. That's how bad number one is. I'll say that. I'm shocked that Gunpowder Milkshake is number 2 and not number 1. But then again, now that I've seen number 1, I'm not so shocked. So I guess we should just go on to number 1, which is Red Notice. And Red Notice, I don't want to sound like some old out of touch person or anything like that, or some curmudgeon or anything like that. But I mean, really, sincerely, from the bottom of my heart, Red Notice is everything that's wrong with a lot of movies today. This whole idea of Netflix spending like $200 million on a movie that they barely had to make at all, an action movie, a globe-trotting action movie that's shot pretty much entirely on green screen, and stars 3 actors that do the same bullshit every time. Like I said, I give some leeway to Dwayne Johnson because he can still be super likable, and I still find a lot of his movies super enjoyable, even if they get a little repetitive sometimes. Like in that Rampage skyscraper area when they all kind of started to blend together. But I still do get something out of. He's still entertaining enough and charming enough for me to get some entertainment out of him. But Gal Gadot showed charm in one role in one movie, being the first Wonder Woman, and then the rest of her movies came out, and it's like, oh yeah, she's given us nothing. Like she's she has nothing to bring to the table. She has no comedic timing. She has no charm left. Nothing, and no screen presence whatsoever. She can't read a line to save her life. Nothing. Just everything on screen when she's on there is lifeless. And then there's the whole Ryan Reynolds thing, which I'm tired of talking about at this point. But long story short, for the people that aren't like regular to this channel and the videos that I've made, not a fan of Ryan Reynolds. His shtick started with Van Wilder in 2002, and he's been doing the same thing ever since. And honestly, I was never that into it. Like, maybe in Waiting, I found him kind of funny and a little charming. Just Friends, I might have found a little funny and a little charming. But everything else is just the same old bullshit, and him milking everything he can out of his fan base, who will laugh at anything, no matter what it is, as long as it comes out of his mouth. He could say the worst shit imaginable. He could say shit that would get him canceled like 50 times over, but just because he opened his mouth and words came out, there will be people on the floor laughing at the sheer fact that that moment exists. And it's... and I do not get the Ryan Reynolds thing. I probably never will get the Ryan Reynolds thing. And doing the same bullshit here, because of course he is. And like I said, the amounts of money that these people are paid to do this same thing over and over again on a green screen, when you have so many other smaller movies that could be made with this budget that Netflix could put out themselves, and the fact that they're trying to franchise it is just so fucking... And the thing also that I mentioned when I talked about it before was the fact that I had heard somewhere that I guess somebody in a position of power, somebody close to somebody in a position of power, actually said on record that Netflix and the like are actually making movies that cater to people who watch movies while they look at their phones. And that's why you watch movies like Red Notice, and you'll see they have bursts of action, and then just kind of nothing in between. And the action is like so lazily done as easily with as little effort as possible, and then there's just kind of breaks in between where just nothing's happening, where Ryan Reynolds is just talking, and we're supposed to think that's the greatest thing ever just because he's talking. I think it's the funniest shit ever. Even when he's saying nothing at all, he's doing it with that stupid sarcastic inflection every single time, the same one, where it's like, oh, that must be funny, and the audience will just laugh. He's literally a walking laughter sign that they have at like talk shows, where even if the joke doesn't land, they say, oh, for TV's sake, just laugh, make it sound like it's funny. It's like Ryan Reynolds is basically the embodiment of that. Like, as long as he's around, people are just basically programmed to say, oh, I guess I should be laughing now. There's Ryan Reynolds. And that on top of the catering to the whole thing about almost seeming to encourage people to look at their phones instead of the movie that they're watching. Because you have people that can separate it, where they can say, like, here's, a movie like Red Notice, I can just have my phone out. Or here's a Scorsese movie, I shouldn't have my phone out. But when you program people that way, that's what they're gonna always have the phone. And movies are gonna, like, disappear out of their frame. And it might sound like I'm trying to be too apocalyptic or something like that. It's like, oh, this is the end of movies as we know it. But I mean, when you're literally training your audiences to stop watching your movie, what does that say? What are you doing? And it's like, to make movies like this, it's clear that you don't even care about the process of making a movie. You care about taking it's like, there were a lot of jokes when this movie came out. Even just the posters came out, people were saying, like, this movie was made by a computer, this movie was made by an algorithm. And it's like, I think that's exactly what happened. And it's like, oh yeah, here's these three people. They'll Twitter will be happy. Twitter will say, oh, I like this line that Ryan Reynolds said because Ryan Reynolds said it. And it's like, it's all nothing. This is not a movie. This is a demo reel. A 2 fucking hour demo reel. This is not a movie. It's not, that's the only conclusion I can come to. This is just not a fucking movie anymore. And it's,
and I can't, and yeah. I think I said all the things I needed to say about it in the review that I did. So if you need to hear anything else, it'll be there. But I'm just so done with Red Notice and any movie like it, and any future movie like it. And something tells me the next future movie like it is going to be called Red Notice 2, I'm sure. Or Red Notice, some stupid bullshit subtitle. So, that's the worst that this year had to offer, I think. At least from what I saw. So, if I missed anything, thank Christ, I guess, if it was going to be any worse than any of these. I hope I don't come across it. So, there that is. I think the only movie I didn't get a chance to see that could have potentially been here was the new Resident Evil, which isn't here because I didn't see it. And maybe I wouldn't think it's not Paul W.S. Anderson anymore, so maybe it's a little better, but from what I've heard, I'm not optimistic, but this is what this is for this year. So luckily, the next time we do this, it's going to be for the best movies of the year, and we can be much more enthusiastic and talk about movies that are much more memorable. We can talk about it a bit more in detail, which will be fun. And so after this, I don't know what's coming. There's going to be more reviews and stuff like that. A couple more Emily Blunt videos that I'm excited to do, and then whatever else comes up. And obviously awards videos will continue for a while. So until whatever the next thing is, I think that's it.